Today our presentation will be used to argue that reinforcing oppositeness and binary thinking hurts everyone, by using evidence throughout early age, gender, race, occupation, rape culture harms. The ideology of oppositeness has been an integral part of the United States culture, which is why it is reinforced and socialized starting at an early age. For instance, infants have to undergo genital surgery in order to meet the normative requirement of male and female genitals. The harm that this brings about is the fact that infants' naturally developed bodies are modified through painful surgery. In addition, this can be harmful for the individual mentally when they learn what happened to them at a later age. Furthermore, those who don't follow through with the surgery are left to face stigmatization towards both them and their child. The ideology of oppositeness has been between males and female behaviors and appearance is socialized and reinforced throughout a hidden school curriculum. The harm is the fact that gender beliefs about male and female bodies being different, along with constraining clothing and behaviors, are socialized and later reinforced as a normative part of that child's development. The results can be seen throughout gender. The ideology of oppositeness is a form of constructed and reinforced by society. These norms state that there must be two opposite genders only, male and female, and follow a heterosexual relationship. In addition, their bodies must be different and identified by their genitals, and they should be used for distinct purposes such as penetration and being penetrated. In addition, the male has a distinct trait of masculinity, which encompasses strength and not having feelings, and the female an opposite one, femininity, which includes vulnerability and weakness. This belief about gender, bodies, and behavior leads to further harms to meet those norms, such as genital surgery, body modification, financial costs for women to be decorative objects, having to pursue certain jobs, majors, sports, and heterosexual partners. In addition, there are harms for not following these norms. Men, for instance, stigmatize each other for not being masculine by calling each other fags, and women are being labeled as sluts for not following the sexual double standard, which states that females accordingly must not pursue sex and males should. In addition, these social harms also intersect with race, occupation, and race culture, as seen in the next slides. Another type of conditioning that begins at an early age, people of different races tend to be lumped into the problematic opposite categories of white and non-white. This creates a dichotomous relationship based on skin color between privileged whites and people of color who are disfavored by the dominant social narrative. Disciplinary measures in schooling have also a profound impact on the self-image of young black children, particularly boys, who are perceived as more likely to misbehave. This has a self-fulfilling prophecy effect and actually brings about the exact sort of behavior it eschews by causing black boys to generally believe that they are troublemakers. Taking an intersectional approach to this issue involves looking at many different categories like race, gender, but also class, ability, and other things, and recognizing that different combinations of these produce unique life outcomes. Occupation follows the same rules of oppositeness, as the most valued jobs are typically held by privileged members of society. Traditional values dictate that in a family, men should ideally be the breadwinner, while women preferably stay home and perform care work for family members and manage domestic tasks, also called reproductive labor, performing the opposite role. However, the binary relationship reinforces male privilege and leads to an unequal division of labor in the home, also creating role-centered guilt when one is unable to successfully fulfill their role. But in recent decades, there has been a dramatic shift in who performs the household reproductive labor along gendered, racial, and class lines. More and more today, we see an outsourcing of reproductive labor among middle and upper class white women. Reproductive labor is now often reserved for immigrant women or women of color who belong to the working class, and their roles performing reproductive labor in the more affluent household reinforces dichotomous relationships along racial and economic class lines. This phenomenon embodies a perceived binary relationship between groups, with women still performing the majority of reproductive labor and privileged white people being served by poor people of color. As stated, the harms of reinforced oppositeness regarding gender behaviors and beliefs of bodies intersect with rape culture. For instance, the belief about female bodies being fragile and vulnerable influences females to feel fear and anxiety about being violently victimized and sexually assaulted by males who are supposed to be dominant and penetrators. The harm that stems from this, females freezing rather than fighting or fleeing from the rapist. In addition, males who have been raped are less likely to report, since to be raped is to be feminized. Along these lines, prison rape is influenced by the masculinization that rape brings about another harm. In addition, males are less likely to intervene during sexual assault in fear of not following masculinity. Furthermore, the naturalization of body and gender belief oppositeness has made rape seem universal in Western culture. Unfortunately, sexual assault has become a gendered process to fulfill the norms of oppositeness, masculine and feminine. The greatest harm is the normalization of sexual assault. Other cultures, such as the Jurai, don't follow oppositeness, and thus there is a lack of sexual assault. Conclusion: the harms encompass stigmatization, lack of resources, occupations, discrimination, normalization of rape, and physical mental harm. Our solution: reinforce sameness, recognize gender as a social construct, and prevent early socialization. Here's our works cited, and that's it. Any questions?